mendapat penjelasan daripada SUDR, itu pun kita boleh hantar lagi kepada SUDR, dan ini adalah supplementary lah. Maknanya contoh, walaupun 10, selalunya 10 soalan, tambahan lagi 5 soalan. So ada 15 soalan dalam satu sidang. Tetapi usul baru kita boleh hantar juga. Maknanya ini usul perkara 21/2 yang kita boleh satu. Yang pertama adalah berkenaan berkepentingan orang ramai, dan yang kedua adalah untuk melibatkan perhatian segera. So atas 2 poin ni kita boleh hantar lagi satu soalan ataupun usul yang kita baru ni, kita hantar terus untuk dibicarakan di dalam sidang lah. So saya rasa cukup saja sebab ramai dah tengok sini. Jom kita sini.
Okay, so selepas terima kasih Syed. Terima kasih. So untuk sesi seterusnya saya nak persilakan wakilan saya untuk Parlimen YB. Ini adalah edisi yang ketiga for public. So yang ni bukan kohort, yang bukan proses kohort. So di public ada yang daripada Penang. Siapa daripada Penang? 2 orang daripada Penang, seorang daripada Johor Batu Pahat, yang lain daripada KL lah. So ini adalah for public kali yang ketiga. So dipersilakan YB, kita mulakan sedikit kata luar daripada Saddiq, and then kita Q&A teruslah kot.
Ya.
Okay, so silakan.
Assalamualaikum, Tachahau, Yupriyorking Vanakam. Belakang boleh dengar ke? Minta maaf lah terpaksa buat di luar. Di Parlimen sekarang security sangat ketat. Korang sempat tak masuk tengok perbahasan tadi? Oh, pukul 3. Okay, akan masuk nantilah. Pukul 3 dah boring lah. Jadi pagi-pagi baru perbahasan lebih best. Pagi tadi Prime Minister's question time. Kat Parlimen ni korang kena tahu, dia ada masa perbahasan dia agak rancak. Dia selalu selepas makan tengah hari ni, dia sesi ahli Parlimen, slot khas yang akan bahaskan tentang isu-isu yang berbangkit lah. Usually in the morning is when you'll have interaction with the ministers or at times with the Prime Minister. Cuma saya nak kongsikan satu perkara. Malaysia sebagai negara yang mengamalkan sistem demokrasi berparlimen, punca kuasa tu nya walaupun di Parlimen, tetapi di Malaysia lazimnya kuasa sebenar terletak di Putrajaya. That's the fact of the matter. Kalau kita mengikut sistem seperti di UK, it may be slightly different. Parliament is a lot more stronger, independent, have a lot of influence. But in Malaysia, whether you like it or not, the executive mainkan peranan sangat besar. Parlimen ni lebih kepada seimbang. Sebagai contohnya, kalau nak merangka undang-undang, saya sebelum ni pernah mencadangkan supaya kita memansuhkan pencen bagi ahli politik, termasuk bagi diri saya lah. The best I can do is just to propose. Tetapi realitinya, pihak sebenar yang boleh mencadangkan hanya merupakan pihak eksekutif. I can put in my own private members bill, tetapi private members bill tu hanya akan tersadai dekat sana je lah. Kalau kerajaan tak nak mencadangkan, segitulah takkan boleh dijadikan undang-undang. But it doesn't mean that Parliament is not important. Kerana Parlimen itu tetap akan meluluskan undang-undang. Dengan itu, kuasa seimbang itu sangat penting. Parlimen adalah medan rakyat supaya rakyat boleh lihat apa pihak legislatif ataupun kerajaan atau pembangkang sedang lakukan, dan itu boleh dijadikan ujian kepada pilihan raya. Rakyat tahu adakah pihak ini membuat kerja dengan betul, tidak betul, seimbang atau tidak. So with that, Parliament has its own particular role. Kalau saya nak bandingkan pada sidang pertama saya bila saya masuk atau dipilih pada tahun 2018, I can say general interest atau participation perbahasan-perbahasan di Parlimen ni tak adalah serancak pada hari ini. I think mostly because of social media. Kalau dulu ni, kalau kita nak tengok perbahasan kat Parlimen, banyak datang daripada sumber-sumber rasmi ataupun media traditional, establishment legacy media. But today, saya agak yakin kalau sekata korang tengok video Parlimen, you won't say korang tengok RTM kan? Tengok dari mana video-video ni? TikTok. Tengok TikTok paling mainkan peranan. Sampai ke satu tahap di mana sebelum ni saya boleh buat live session terus menggunakan TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Sekarang saya dah diharamkan. There's a new law implemented pada persidangan Parlimen ni, kerana dulu saya bawa phone stand tu ada 3 phone, bawa Facebook, Instagram dengan TikTok, which was a lot more effective. TikTok 10,000 live viewers, Instagram 3,000, Facebook another 2K. In total you have 15,000-16,000 people watching live. Bila dah habis orang share. Tapi sebab itulah kan ada pihak-pihak yang mungkin tidak begitu selesa, things happen. But adakah itu bermaksud you give up? No, you don't. You work around it, you find another way. But that's Parliament for you. And that's why I believe dalam sistem demokrasi berparlimen di Malaysia, di Malaysia, it's very important to have the best MPs in Parliament supaya akhirnya rakyat boleh menguji, rakyat boleh lihat whether these are the best, smartest and brightest people legislating laws for Malaysia. Itu satu komponen. Before I end it, I want to say di Malaysia ni walaupun kita mengikut sistem Westminster, tapi tanggungjawab hakiki ahli parlimen tu tidak terhad kepada apa yang berlaku di parlimen. Kerana parlimen ni tidak bersidang setiap hari, sehari bekerja. Contoh korang pergi kerja pukul 8 pagi, 9 pagi sampai pukul 5 petang. Tak. Fridays we have no parliament, weekends we have no parliament. The fact of the matter is, maybe kalau kita cantumkan hanya 3 bulan daripada 12 bulan, if you take every day lah, di mana parlimen bersidang. A lot of the time parliament is not in session. What will an MP do when parliament is not in session? Anyone? Nah, apa tanggungjawab ahli parlimen kalau parlimen tidak bersidang? Pardon? Kawasan. Tanggungjawab di kawasan tu sangat penting. Betul? Kenapa tanggungjawab dekat kawasan tu penting? Betul, dipilih oleh orang kawasan tersebut. Tapi dia buat apa kat kawasan? Takkan lepak mamak kira buat kerja dekat kawasan. Syok macam tu. Betul, serapan tuan, dengar keluh kesah rakyat. Why is that important? I just want selain kita dapat bantu kebajikan, but how does that make you a better member of parliament? Pardon? Okay, building trust with your constituents, which is very important. Kita tak boleh hanya merangka undang-undang di awangan. You cannot be a politician who sits on a high horse thinking that he or she is always right and everyone else is wrong. If you don't build trust with your constituents, how are you going to legislate laws for your constituents? What else? Kenapa kerja dekat kawasan ni sangat penting? Pardon? Yes, building a very good community. Kadang-kadang bila kita buat kerja baik dekat kawasan tersebut, it reflects who we are as a member of parliament. What we want to legislate at the national agenda, we can start first at our respective constituency. One more. What else?
Acknowledging problems on the ground.
Pardon?
Acknowledging
Yes.
problems on the ground.
Very important. Acknowledging the problems on the ground. Because the fact of the matter is, for you to become a good legislator, you must not be disconnected with the public. You cannot be disconnected with members of your constituents. Besides just building trust with your constituents, it's also about knowing new problems or resolving past problems through legislations, which you can only learn through what you see, what you hear on the ground. The reason why I'm sharing this is kerana kalau kita hanya menghadiri setiap satu sesi di parlimen, kehadiran 100%, perbahasan di parlimen rancak, tetapi kerja di kawasan teruk, diabaikan, orang pun tak nampak muka kita, kita tak berjaya berikan khidmat yang terbaik. Kadang-kadang tak ada, walaupun rakyat tu tahu kita tak ada duit. It's not just about giving money. Banyak kawasan-kawasan pelbagai sebelum ini yang memang tak ada peruntukan pun. Tapi kenapa dia masih lantik atau pilih ahli parlimen tersebut? Is that ahli parlimen memahami, mendengar, sedikit sebanyak membawa suara mereka ke peringkat tertinggi. Sebab itu kalau nak jadi ahli parlimen di Malaysia, jangan hanya nilai mengikut fungsi dan peranannya di parlimen, kerana parlimen tu bukanlah 365 hari. The fact of the matter is, the remaining days will be about how you work and operationalize your idealism on the ground. Itu peranan yang sangat-sangat penting. Sebab tu saya kata dia dua cabang lah, politik khidmat di kawasan dan juga politik dasar di peringkat parlimen. When you combine these two, that's when you have a proper hybrid of a politician, ahli parlimen yang baik, dapat melaksanakan tanggungjawab yang baik. Dengan itu saya yakin boleh bawa perubahan yang lebih baik. That's for member parlimen. Eksekutif kita bincang nantilah. Tapi saya buka soalan kepada adik-adik untuk tanya sebanyak yang mungkin.
Assalamualaikum. Nama saya Haziq.
Haziq atau Aziq? Haziq.
So soalan saya ialah as you can see, banyak orang muda rasa penat dengan politik dekat Malaysia ni ataupun politik dekat mana-mana student. So apakah mesej YB kepada mereka yang rasa undi mereka ni tak bawa apa-apa perubahan?
Pertama sekali, saya tak nak lecture lah kepada anak muda yang rasa mereka ni penat, lesu, rasa ni politik ini tidak menjiwai mereka ataupun telah menjauhkan diri daripada mereka. Kerana mesti ada sebab. Nak bila mereka lihat daripada satu kitaran politik ke kitaran politik yang lain, lazimnya label yang diberikan adalah semua ahli politik ni sama je. Kerajaan kata begini, bila pembangkang kata macam ni, masuk kerajaan sama balik. That's often itulah saya rasa sikap yang diambil oleh segelintir rakyat. So I'm not here to lecture. Cuma saya nak beri satu gambaran atau persoalan. Lupakan ahli politik, lupakan saya kejap. Whether we like it or not, kita hidup dalam negara yang demokrasi. Suara kamu adalah suara yang sangat penting. Kamu merupakan pengundi yang menentukan pemimpin. Pemimpin yang berada di atas, yang ada kuasa yang sangat besar itu, dipilih oleh kamu. Let's say kamu sebagai anak muda kata, politik ni boring lah, semua sama lah, lesu lah. Dan kamu menjauhkan diri daripada politik. Dan lebih teruk, kamu tidak mengundi langsung. Adakah ia bermaksud bahawa pemimpin ke atas tu tiba-tiba akan tiada? Tak. Kalau kamu tak mengundi, orang lain tetap mengundi. Kalau anak muda tidak mengundi, siapa yang akan mengundi? Siapa? Akan miau-miau, orang lebih tua lah akan mengundi. Atau kalau segelintir anak muda yang berfahaman, idealisme tinggi, kena rasa, ada satu cacat celah, sebab itu saya nak menjauhkan diri terus. Akan ada yang mungkin tak kisah dengan cacat celah, janji kepentingan mereka dijaga, akan terus mengundi. So that's the reality in Malaysia atau mana-mana negara demokrasi. Kecuali kalau kita tidak mengamalkan demokrasi lah, berada di sistem lain. But that's not the case. So if you stay away from politics, it does not mean that politics will stay away from you. Politics will follow wherever you go. The leaders at the top at times do not want idealists, do not want smart, young, talented people to vote, because if they do, it becomes much harder for them to monopolize and control the power in Putrajaya, because they dislike that. Your votes most likely cannot be bought because you are smart, talented. 50 ringgit, 100 ringgit, heck, even 1,000 ringgit will not be enough to buy your vote. So I hope that you do not lose faith. Do not lose faith, do not lose faith. Because if you do, it doesn't mean that democracy will end. It doesn't mean that elected representatives will miraculously disappear. It just means that someone else will decide who represents you in Parliament and who will represent you, your children and your grandchildren's future. So you can stay away from politics, but politics will never ever stay away from you.
John?
Okay, so we see that there's a lot of grassroots, NGOs, and only young people who are changing the demographic landscape of the politics situation. We'll see in the next 10 years to come.
Okay, I'll share some stated truths, and these are based on hard facts and data, and then I'll draw a conclusion. First and foremost, with the passing of Undi 18, Undi Automatic, actually more of Undi Automatic than Undi 18, people often focus a lot on Undi 18, which obviously I care a lot about. But being someone who looks at hard data and numbers, Undi Automatic is actually the biggest game changer. Undi 18 adds up about 1.8 million young voters, which is sizable. But do you know that we had more than 4 million young voters who were unregistered? That's double the amount of Undi 18. With Undi 18 and Undi Automatic, young voters today are effectively the kingmakers of Malaysian politics. Back then, young people barely made up 40% of the electorate. Today, young people make up more than 50% of the electorate. And as every day passes by, that number keeps on increasing. Because every quarter, hundreds of thousands of young people are added into the new electoral roll. So that's why it becomes much, much harder to read the outcome of elections, because unlike past elections, there can be a general reading of who young people will vote. But not because you are first-timers, no electoral record in that particular constituency, very hard to read. That's the first observation I want to make. The second one is a lot more controversial, but it's an observation when you look at data. Data is not biased. How people read data may be biased. So I'll give an unbiased reading of that data first. In Malaysia today, like many other developed countries, we're not yet become developed countries, but hopefully we'll get there. Malaysia's rate of replacement of its population is at a worrying trend. Okay, what is rate of replacement? Malaysia kita ada dalam 31 juta rakyat, 2 juta orang luar, about 29 million are fellow Malaysians, pengundi dalam 20 ke 21 juta. You break down that data. Malaysia prides itself in being a very multiracial, multi-religious country, correct? Diversity is our strength, is our asset. It should not be viewed as a liability. But when our rate of replacement, saya beri contoh lah, kalau ada suami isteri tu untuk menggantikan jumlah populasi yang sama perlu ada 2.2 anak. Obviously you can't have 2.2 lah kan. Takkan bila ada seorang anak tu macam 1.5. But the point is, mungkin bro ada 2, bro ada 3, macam nampaklah jumlah macam tu. Okay. But we are not that, I mean, kita dah kurang daripada 2.2. We haven't reached Korea. Korea tahap yang sangat memisahkan 0.8, 0.7. China is at the decline. America is at the decline. Malaysia, I think on average about 1.5 to 1.8. But when you break down the numbers even closer, among the Chinese community, it's very worrying. The rate of replacement at times go below 1. Kalau tak pun 1.1, 1.2. Among Malays is still the highest among ethnic population. When you break down Bumi Putra, dia ada Sabah Sarawak lagi banyak. Why am I sharing you this? Am I going to make a racist argument? No. I'm making an observation. If this trend continues, back then it's about 60-40 divide. 60%, 40%, still being very much multi-racial, multi-religious country. Then 10, 20, 30 years ago, you asked me for the future, right? That projection will shift. Unless that demographic pattern changes. What does that mean for Malaysian politics? You draw that conclusion. I don't want to draw. I draw nanti takut jadi isu perkauman pula kan. That to me, I am a firm believer, even though I'm a Malay Muslim, I'm a firm believer that multiracialism, our multi-religiosity, our diversity is our ultimate strength asset of this country. Not just internally, but even how we project ourselves abroad. That is our strength, and we should never ever be apologetic about it. But as decades pass, that trend shift becomes a little bit worrying. What will I do as a policymaker? Obviously, there are many policies to be implemented to ensure that we move down a more multiracial, multi-religious path. But above and beyond that, I think it's tepuk dada tanya selera lah. Who needs to have more children? I don't want to say that because I'm not married yet as well. Cakap, oh kau nak suruh tapi kau sendiri belum ada anak. But I just want to share the observation because that's the second observation. Young people being kingmakers. Two is, who are the young people in particular 20, 30 years down the road? Final observation I'd like to make where I think it becomes a lot more positive is, young people today and tomorrow I believe will be a lot more resilient, will have great perseverance and will be a lot more educated. Okay. Again, trend of young people having degrees or a TVET certificate is increasing. It's not decreasing. Even orang cakap yang anak muda lepasan SPM ni dia tak nak belajar. But numbers don't show that young people do not want to take a degree. Kalau tanya mereka, oh tak nak, tapi in the end they will end up doing it as well. Mungkin sebab pengaruh ibu bapa, or now the cost of education, especially for you to get micro credentials, is lower, etc., etc. So you have a smarter generation, but smartness alone is insufficient. Why do I say we have a more resilient generation? Kerana generasi korang ni lah yang paling teruji. I don't believe, that's why I've made many speeches in Parlimen saying, belum kata anak muda ni malas, lesu, generasi strawberry. I feel like just standing up and like asking them to be in your shoes for 1 week. You guys will be a very much tested generation. Kena kerja 2-3 kerja to make ends meet. Your parents' generation can own a house by 30. You guys will most likely only be able to own a house mid-30s, maybe even early 40s. Sekarang hanya mampu sewa. Back then, getting a job is fairly straightforward. Today, straightforward, but for Grab. Even though you have immense debt, education debt behind you as you graduate from university. But worse of all, in that particular picture back then, your parents' generation can be taken care of your grandparents' generation. Boleh duduk kat rumah. Now it's the other way around. Because your parents will be retiring without enough retirement funds and savings. You are expected to take care of your parents. You are expected to take care of yourself. You are expected to also start a new family, which is under you, therefore making you a sandwich generation. While I say that that's negative, I think young people will come out stronger. Similarly, how in post-World War II, we have countries who fail miserably after, despite succeeding before. But you also have population like in Japan, South Korea, under crushing poverty, then becoming an Asian giant. Japan from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, then really building back its work culture and an industrial base coming from young people. When you are tested, it will be a new generation which will be reborn and reborn stronger. So with that, I think really young people will come. My prediction, young people will come out stronger. They will not lose and suddenly become a much weaker generation. These are 3 observations, and these 3 things I believe will guide where Malaysian politics will go. With that, I have great hopes in you guys lah. Regardless of race and religion, I hope you'll drive that more progressive, multiracial, diverse agenda. Selalu cakna tentang isu-isu semasa, bicarakan tentang soal rakyat, supaya akhirnya negara ini akan jadi negara yang maju.
I have 2 questions. The first question is, based on your past experience as the Minister of Youth and Sport, how do you balance your politik khidmat and politik asal? And my second question is, what is your view on the current opposition?
Oh, 2 very tough questions. First much easier, second very tough one. Hard for me to be a neutral observer. I'll answer the first one. When I was serving as a minister, there's an additional portfolio on my shoulder. It's not just me being a legislator, but at the same time, there's also about me being part of the executive. When you are part of the executive, you're not meant only to take care of the 50,000 voters in Muda. You are effectively given the responsibility to take care of the millions of youths or those who actively partake in sports across Malaysia. With that comes a lot of juggling. For me, usually during working days, I'll definitely be focusing on my politik dasar, or at least my role as a Minister of Youth and Sports. On weekends will be when I do my politik khidmat. But there will be times, for example, tak bolehlah setiap hujung minggu bila saya jadi menteri turun ke kawasan. Bila lagi nak turun ke negeri-negeri lain? Sebab banyak mesyuarat memang tertumpu di Putrajaya atau di KL. Bila lagi nak turun Sabah, Sarawak, Perlis, Kedah semua. Nanti orang kata ni terlalu bias hanya satu tempat. That's why it takes a lot of juggling. I'm quite lucky kerana Muda tu taklah jauh sangat. Ada kadang-kadang kawasan di Sabah, Sarawak yang kena ambil 2-3 flight. Lepas tu kena naik 4x4. Berjam-jam baru sampai. Di Muda, kalau Jack and drive laju, insyaAllah sejam setengah sampai. Slow 2 jam. Kalau jam, 2 jam setengah. So I'm still quite lucky on that end. So it takes a lot of juggling. It depends on the time as well. Kalau Parlimen ada, memang sangat sukarlah. Sebab Parlimen ada, kena hadir Parlimen tu, kena buat kerja eksekutif tu, kena jaga kawasan juga. To me, there's no one straight answer. Oh, satu hari sini, satu hari sana. It's really about assessing it as the problems comes to you. But you have to remember, when you are a minister and you are a member of Parliament, you are not alone. That's why I believe the test of a true leader is not just about how that leader brings him or herself, but it's about how that leader builds a strong team with a proper work culture, with accountability and transparency, with proper work norms, which will form the basis of that team. So pasukan tu setanding atau lebih penting daripada pengaruh pemimpin tersebut. So for me, I was quite lucky. Dekat Muda, I had the youngest chief of staff, who's also a lady, yang dulu bekas pemimpin PAS, who I brought in, Afika Zulkifli, and then flanked her with quite a competent team from different races, religion, young and old, running the Muda office. So when I'm not there, I know that she can run a competent, she can do her job properly. Even while I was pursuing my studies in NUS during times of COVID, then I was in opposition, we were cut off funding. But I knew I wanted to further my studies so that I become a better legislator. So I was gone for about 3 months, but there banyak online, offline studies. Then almost every day, Afika will bring a laptop or tablet. We'll do online calls as she does a house-to-house visit. Supaya orang tahu saya masih mendengar, masih memahami. While in Singapore, I still did crowdfunding untuk pastikan bahawa rakyat Muda dapat tablet dan laptop yang mencukupi. I was still teaching tuition online so that I can fund my Muda constituency office. So having a strong team is also very important. Similarly in KBS, don't look at my success as my success. It is not my success. Undi 18, civil service. NGO undi 18 under Den, Tarama and Kira. My work with different party presidents, deputy presidents, or with different youth leaders in different parties. Lobby bersama untuk undi 18. Then I know siapa yang sokong, siapa yang tak. I'll try to work with them supaya it becomes a collective national agenda daripada agenda salah seorang ahli politik muda. It doesn't work that way. So having a strong team matters, and that's the best way to help you manage your time and manage your agenda forward. At times, having a good, competent team will also act as a check on you. There are many times where I want to do a little bit too many things or too few things. That's why the team will say, okay, this one you should actually cancel it out. Or this one you should focus on this a lot more. If not, you will not be able to do it. So, if there's one lesson which I like to impart is, being a leader is not just about how good you are, it's also about who you surround yourself with. I've made my fair share of mistakes. I mean, if I am to share about that side of the problem, dia panjang sangat. But it is a reminder to me as well. As I move forward, I need to have a very strong, competent team. Thank you. Soalan pertama tu lupa pula. Soalan kedua. Soalan kedua, opposition. Maybe I'll try my best to be as neutral and objective as I can. I'll go good and bad. I'll go bad first lah. Bad is, I think focusing a little bit too much on race and religion without coming up with a policy proposal on how to make that better will not add much value to Malaysia. It's not wrong to focus on it. Why do I say it's not wrong? While Malaysia is a multiracial and multi-religious country, our ethnic identity is still very much personalised and important. Because it is a lie to say, oh, kita ni semua Malaysia tapi kita tak kisah pasal isu agama dengan isu bangsa. Are you still a Muslim? Kalau tiba-tiba ada orang kata hak kamu untuk mempraktikkan agama Buddha kamu tak boleh, orang bangkit marah. Let's say for an example, ada kawasan di kawasan saya, ada kawasan Tokong contohnya yang dah rapuh, tapi tiba-tiba kerajaan kata kita tak nak lagi berikan dana untuk baik pulih kawasan-kawasan agama lain. Orang marah ke tak? Marah kan? Kalau tiba-tiba, contoh di Sabah Sarawak, orang kata tak apa, kita nak fokus hanya kepada penggunaan satu atau dua bahasa, dan bahasa suku kaum kamu itu tidak penting langsung, orang akan marah kan? So the fact of the matter is, Malaysia practices a system of diversity which is of a melting pot. Sorry, bukan melting pot, salad bowl. Let me explain. Salad bowl ni, tahu salad kan, masuk semua, tapi tak adalah sampai blender semua jadi sama. Melting pot tu, semua masuk lalas, semua macam satu ciri. Which is for an example, dekat Indonesia, which practices almost forced assimilation. Semua orang kena nama sama. Dia tak boleh ada Lee Chong Wei, dia kena satu jenis nama kan. Sekolah pun semua kena jenis sama. Hak untuk mengekalkan budaya itu makin terhakis kerana dia nak diasimilasikan kepada satu budaya. We don't practice that. We still have unity in diversity, not removing that level of diversity. So with that in mind, tak salah nak fokus, but fokuslah kepada solusi. Contoh, kamu kritik tentang soal agama atau bangsa, then what is the solution to help that particular population get better, upskill, reskill? I think that's where it becomes, I think that part is slightly lacking. Sebab as long as that part is lacking, dia jadi nampak lebih kepada kritikan, tapi bukan kritikan membina, akhirnya akan jatuh kepada sudut perkauman yang tidaklah begitu baik bagi negara. That's my first criticism. Second criticism adalah, saya rasa, I think, mungkin sebab saya ni terlebih lama pembangkang, bukan terlebih lama, I think usually kalau you tengok Parlimen, the trend is pembangkang lompat ke kerajaan. Saya 3 kali daripada kerajaan ke pembangkang. It's a lonely path, but it's a principled one, but it's a very lonely one. But with that, I think I've seen, for example, how a good competent opposition could operate, but maybe when they move to government, competency tu tukar sedikit. But being in opposition, you must be able to share a unique vision of the country, which you want to take the country and the people to, so that they will believe in you. Because criticizing alone is insufficient for you to become a good government. You must have that clear vision forward. Yes, at times being the most strongest and loudest critic may be sufficient for you to win an election. But is that the responsible thing to do? Maybe not. Because when you're in a government, there's no proper accountability mechanism to hold your words to. So I think that part, there's a lot of room for improvement. Where do I want to say, I want to be a little bit more kinder to opposition. I actually see quite a number of opposition MPs who debate with facts, data, who give proper solutions, constructive criticism, but sadly enough do not get the media attention and highlight which they deserve. Being in Parliament every day, I've never missed a single day. Even when I attend meetings outside, I will always be listening to what's going on in Parliament. Saya kesiankan kerana saya beri contoh pada satu hari tu ada 20 ahli parlimen pembangkang tentang bahaskan tentang isu sangat penting, isu ekonomi, pengangkutan, isu keterjaminan makanan, cadangan-cadangan yang diketengahkan. Tapi daripada 20 ahli parlimen pembangkang ni ada seorang tiba-tiba kata bahawa random fact yang betul-betul berlaku. Taman Tugu tu patut kita janganlah dia nampak terlalu mirip Eropah. Semua 19 ahli parlimen yang bangkitkan isu-isu solusi, isu-isu dasar disampingkan, akhirnya yang media highlight adalah satu isu ni. That one to me is quite unfair, and I've witnessed it in Parliament. But I've also recommended to my friends in opposition. I mean, in the end, the media wants to sensationalize things or will focus on sensationalist views because that's how they get their profits, right? So if you give them the opportunity, don't blame the media, you should blame yourself. So that's where I think there should be that middle ground. So I try my best to be as focused as I could. Sebab kerisauan saya kalau ucapan saya 15 minit, 1 minit tak, 1 minit lah, 10 saat tu saya cakap benda kontroversi, hancur lah segala-gala ucapan saya. Ya.
Okay, so kita ambil 3 lagi soalan sekaligus. Yap, satu.
Korang nak masuk nanti.
Assalamualaikum YB, my name is Ahmad, I'm from Sarawak. Soalan saya mudah lah. It's not a question, it was my thinking. It's more as I'm a reader, so I read a lot of books, and I know you are definitely someone who digest and see banyak, explore macam kan. Maybe you can walk me through how do you get to where you are in the context of how you think. So do you have any macam particular author that you digest a lot of different works or any particular book? So that's the first part of the question. Second is macam I have this ultimate book recommendation. Like if you were to recommend a particular book that you feel it resonates so much with you and it's essentially a part of you, if you have one, would you mind sharing it about what it is?
Okay, I'll very quickly answer Arman's question. First and foremost, how I formulate my train of thought, my recommendation is for all of you to be as interdisciplinary as you can. Do not limit yourself to only one skill set or one area or specialty. For example, if you're reading law, don't just read books in relation to the law. Be as interdisciplinary as possible. Why do I say that? Especially with the world of AI and ChatGPT replacing many different jobs. If you're not interdisciplined, if you're not the master of many, your knowledge can easily be replaceable. But often you'll start to realize what makes you the best critical thinker is when you're able to apply one knowledge set to another and move it around and therefore form the best conclusion. I think first, if you look at Parlimen are like the smartest, brightest people in the world. Back then, Leonardo da Vinci, etc. They are interdisciplinary. They have specialties, but they can paint art, they can do sports, they can do this and that. Because orang kata, tapi tak boleh lah tembak terlalu banyak tempat. Bila tembak banyak tempat ni, doesn't mean that you miss. It actually bila tembak tu, it helps. Because from one field to another, it complements one another. It makes you a better thinker. So that's the first thing I like to recommend, because that's how I formulate my train of thought. At times, I'll get the best of ideas when I run, when I swim, when I bike. At times, for example, when I'm talking about the Urban Renewal Act in Parliament, a particular new piece of legislation, my ideas will not just come from a legal perspective, but will come, for example, when I meet different constituents which at times are not even affected by that law. So being interdisciplinary helps a lot. Second part is book recommendation. My recommendation is for you to read books which you would not be recommending yourself now. Sounds weird, but just hear me. Back then, I love to only focus reading autobiographies or non-fiction. I only started reading fiction when I was in university, much later. And I picked up Khalid Hosseini's book. Then it was 1,000 Splendid Suns. His most popular book is The Kite Runner. And it changed my life. Why? Because I realized I was only limiting my train of thought to a specific set of books or genre. You will start to realize that the power of your mind can only be maximized when you get used to doing things which bring you a little bit of discomfort. It doesn't mean that you that you need to read something which will lead you to sleep. No. But you should not just do things which are comfortable. You need to challenge your norms, challenge your comfort zone, and that's where you get to climb up, your own intellectual ladder. So for me, Syed is one. But again, if you like reading fiction, then try autobiographies. There's no one or two specific book I'll recommend. But what I also say, especially in today's day and era, I know young people may find it very difficult to pick up a book because it's very baca lama. Now it's a world of podcasts, YouTube. You can really read voraciously, but through audiobooks. If not through audiobooks, by listening to podcasts. For me, back then, my general KPI is like 1 book per week. But if I break down the book into words and then convert it into audio, I'm now reading about 6 books a week. Because every week without fail, I will finish reading The Economist magazine. And that's about 12 hours, but I'll put on ×2, so it's shorter. On a bike ride, I can finish it. And then a lot of the newspapers, I'll convert it into audio. For books, I'll convert it to audio. For podcasts, obviously it's on audio, and I always put it on ×2. You can read and listen so much. Like there's this power called speed reading. It's not power. I mean, you can learn it lah, the art of speed reading. But speed listening, not many people talk about it. That's why today when I go watch the cinema, to me it's like, why is the movie so slow? Because I'm so used to, this speed listening. That's something I recommend for you to also adapt.
Then 2 more questions. Quickly.
Macam kita tahu mulai tahun 2027 mereka akan adakan dalam satu kelas cikgu satu kelas. So apa pandangan YB dengan
saya merupakan salah seorang ahli parlimen yang dilantik dalam jawatan kuasa Dwipartisan. Parlimen Dwipartisan dalam isu pembangunan negara, dan isu pembangunan negara ni dia turut menjaga Kementerian Pendidikan dan Pendidikan Tinggi. Saya memang tengah nak tunggu pada sesi yang akan datang. Saya sendiri nak tanya, why saya tak nak terus kritik because I want to know what exactly will the implementation look like. Adakah ia akan membebankan guru-guru? Adakah ia bermaksud bahawa salah seorang guru yang mengajar matematik tiba-tiba kena ajar subjek berasingan? Adakah ia bermaksud bahawa kepadatan dalam kelas tersebut boleh diselesaikan atau tidak? All these questions are critical questions. Saya tak nak terus mengkritik melulu tanpa membangkitkan dalam jawatan kuasa yang menjaga soal pendidikan negara. So I actually want to listen to what the ministry has to say first, because I've seen in cases where what is said and what is done is completely different. I've also seen cases where what is said is sangat negative, tapi what is implemented is very good. So I want to be responsible on this path, especially when I'm part of that bipartisan committee. But obviously I've read all the comments. I've obviously heard from teachers and also from PTAs, Parent Teachers Associations, on how that will be negative for teachers and for students. But obviously I need to be fair and balanced sebab dia belum dilaksanakan lagi. Bila dilaksanakan tu, kita akan tahulah. So at least now it's in a planning phase, planning stage. I want to listen before making a conclusion.
Okay, last one, Liza.
Sorry, bila belajar? Oh, law. Yeah, of course. Oh. Sure. Aside with law first, especially in I-Calls. I-Call ni bukan setakat civil law. Ada syariah juga, subjek-subjek syariah. Walaupun tak nak ambil jurusan syariah, I'm pretty sure you have to take it as well. So beban kerja tu jauh lebih tinggi. Masa tu saya turut bukan salah seorang pembahas di mewakili universiti dan negara. So selalunya kalau semester tu 6 bulan, 4 bulan saya tak ada dalam negara. And I still need to be a good student. Saya tak naklah grade saya terjejas. I want to graduate with a very good CGPA while having a very good extracurricular background to back me up. So memang akan ada masa di mana saya burn out. But how I balance it out, the good thing is because I love reading. So walaupun saya tak ada dalam kelas, I bring the books with me. Saya ada seorang kawan yang sangat baik, yang akan buat catatan nota yang terbaik. When I say catatan nota terbaik, with highlighter, brilliant. And I really bring that with me wherever I go. I'm indebted to that friend of mine. Dan pada masa yang sama, as I shared, being interdisciplinary means that you can pick up knowledge much faster. That's why I still am able to graduate with a good CGPA, get a scholarship then to go to Oxford University, which then I rejected for different reasons lah. But yeah, so that's one. What was my why? Everyone will have their own why, so you don't have to follow me. For me then, I'm set in the direction where I know politics is the epicenter of change. Politics is the epicenter of change because politics is the epicenter of power. Pada peringkat awal, bila saya belajar di Maktab Tentera Diraja, saya pasal niat nak jadi salah seorang pegawai tentera, mengikut jejak langkah atuk saya. Tapi bila saya belajar di Maktab Tentera Diraja, saya sedar juga bahawa pelantikan general tertinggi negara bukan terletak di tangan Panglima, tetapi terletak di tangan ahli politik. Ini mungkin unspoken truth lah. Orang kata, tak, dia dicadangkan oleh majlis tentera, cadangkan yang di-Pertuan Agong. Don't lie to me, I'm not naive lah. Politicians play a pivotal role in shaping that. Sama kata, IGP bukannya ahli politik. Bukan. Don't lie lah. I mean, it's the unspoken truth. That's why I realised, in a country like Malaysia, which aspires to become a developed country, when the epicenter of change and power is politics, if you don't change politics, you will not be able to uplift the position of millions of Malaysians. So I knew that, and that was my big why. I am set in wanting to make Malaysia a developed country, a country with strong democratic institutions and norms, that even if one day we are destined to have the worst ever leader in Malaysia, our country will still move in the right direction because our norms, our people, our institutions are very much independent, strong, and just the viciously talented, that we'll still be able to become a good country. So I'm set on that, and that's my big why. That came about the same time as I got my Oxford offer, and that was also sadly the same time where me and my family were threatened in many different ways. But I knew if they could do that to me, they could do that to literally anyone else. I think that was my turning point, where I realised that it's worth to fight for a country which you believe in. It doesn't mean that you let go of your other goals. Today, I'm fairly certain if I were to reapply to Oxford, inshallah, I'll still get in. But changing Malaysia through the political landscape is priceless. Can you imagine if I picked that path to do my masters in Oxford? I would not have contested. I would not have become the youngest MP then, and what more, made the youngest minister. I will not be able to do Undi 18, Undi automatic, paid internships. I wouldn't be able to bring a new healthcare scheme for athletes. I'll not be able to introduce a sugar tax, which will then be used to fund healthcare and also our sports fraternity. To me, that's priceless in politics. And once you get that feeling, it's the best feeling in the world. I can tell you that even though I earn so much more now, oh my god, I mean, if you know how much I earn during my part-time gigs, I joke lah with some of my friends, buat shooting 3 jam, dapat gaji seperti Perdana Menteri 1 bulan. Okay, well, I donate it lah, but you realise, actually this is so much, pays so much better. But that in no way matches the level of satisfaction of seeing a law passed in Parliament which will be able to enfranchise more than 5 million young people, not only for this generation but for generations to come. So there's something which is much bigger than money.
Okay, that's all. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Terima kasih YB untuk masa 1 jam bersama kita. So ada sedikit pula penghargaan for YB dan take picture.
Let's take a photo together lah.
Yap, kita foto. Jom, let's go. Pantas.
Okay, ni sekarang kita nak ambil gambar. Semua posing 4,000 lebih ni. Posing sekali cepat supaya kita dapat masuk dalam gambar ni.
Okay, make sure you punya badan berlapis. Sambil dia lapis. Okay, yang di belakang dicelah. Dicelah-celah manusia. Okay, good. Barbie, okay, siapa yang Sophie? Ini sikit. Okay. Okay, fotografi nampak? Bapak masuk. Tuan.
Squeeze ke dalam.
Okay, okay, kita ada 3 minit saja sampai Sesi silakan. 3 minit. 3 minit saja. Bagi korang.
Okay, cepat. Siapa nak selfie boleh masuk.
Nanti plug wajib tu plug tu.
Okay. Dah masuk.
Plug penghargaan tu pada wajib ni tapi set dengan ni.
Masuk. Oh, kejap. Yang dalam ni pun nak masuk kejap. Aku ambil kat sini. Okay, ramai dah masuk. Okay, masuk. Mantap masuk sini. Okay. Dah. Cukup tak? Dah masuk?
Okay, cepat. 1 minute left, come on. Bye guys. Cantik WhatsApp.
Botol siapa gila?
1 minute.
Okay, kita nak masuk ke sidang balik. Thank you everyone. Nanti kalau ada persoalan berkenaan Parlimen atau MUA, boleh tanya dalam sesi live seterusnya. Bye bye. Thank you.